for your support with happy dollars. At this time, I'd like to take a quick moment to introduce Shelly, who is just an incredible speaker facilitator. In my previous job, I was with the American Society of Radiologic Technologists, which is a part of ASAE, which is the American Society of Association Executives. And they have an incredible Young Persons Leadership Academy, which is the Next Gen Summit. And that's where I got to meet Shelly Alcorn, our speaker today. She did an incredible 3 or 4 day, all day facilitation, teaching all of these young people about leadership and association management and future technologies coming out of the pipeline. And she is an incredible speaker, facilitator, and somebody who that you can count on in a moment's notice. And so I just want to say thank you, Shelly. And your presentation today is going to be great. And I believe that it's going to be really a facilitation rather than a presentation. So your active engagement is strongly encouraged and well received. So take it away, Shelly.
Well, thank you. High praise indeed. There's nowhere to go but down. So yay. But thank you so much for having me. And yes, when I make the promise to my next Jenners that I will be there for you whenever you need it, that is what I'm going to do. Part of leadership is following through. So yeah, so thanks for having me. This was put together kind of on a moment's notice. And what we're focusing on today is really, I'm going to start out with some statistics about women in the workforce and sort of focus on that. And then we have 2 directions that we can go. And I'm going to depend on you to throw in the chat as to which direction you'd like to take to sort of talk about some issues that have come up and been revealed in more stark relief during 2020 than perhaps otherwise. And as we move into 21 and 22, sort of things that are on the horizon. So we're going to be thinking about maybe talking about some resilient techniques, maybe talking about leadership and power dynamics, maybe talking about workforce in general, but I would like this to be participatory, and I'm happy to run down rabbit trails as well. So we'll just sort of start with a framework and then we'll see where we go from there. So before 2020, before P, BP, we were seeing some disturbing signs about women in the workplace. Particularly globally. And this is the view that I tend to take is sort of global, and we can sort of focus back in on the United States a little bit. But globally, women in the workforce prior to the pandemic had declined from 51.4% in 1990 to about 48.5%. So we were starting to see some erosion with women in the workforce. In many countries, women account for 40% or more of the total workforce, but that's highly dependent on cultural context and highly dependent on the general economic conditions of the country. In addition to work, we're still doing work inside the home, still more hours, trying to even those out a little bit. And in 2018, only 24 CEOs out of the Fortune 500 companies were women. Women account for less than 24% of senior roles globally, and the global pay gap is widening, which is not particularly good news for women. And because of these non-traditional and sort of interrupted career paths, older women in particular have less access to pensions, and the poverty rate for older women is higher than men of the same age. And those were sort of some of the statistics we were dealing with before the pandemic. So we knew there was work to do and everybody was doing it, and that was great. And then COVID-19 hit. And in the beginning, we all sort of stopped and had to take a breath, and we all had to calibrate and recalibrate what this pandemic meant. And what sort of changes were going to happen in the workforce because of it. And I know we've all been very anxious. I know we're very tired of talking about it. And I get that. Part of resilience is talking about things you're tired of talking about. because there are new issues that we need to focus on, particularly when it comes to women. Current studies right now out of McKinsey and other Pew Internet research are projecting that employment for women to reach what it was pre-pandemic days, post-pandemic, that full employment employment levels for women will not reach that level until 2024 at this point. And that's 2 years after men are expected to achieve pre-pandemic employment. So there's a 2-year lag there, and that's kind of a long ways. So 2020 was a setback for us in a lot of respects. And this is not at all there are men on this call and we love you. This is not what this is about. We're just talking about women's issues. We need all the male allies we can get. We need all the trans allies we can get. We need allies of every kind for everyone in order to sort of navigate our way through a very highly disrupted system that's going to continue to be disrupted. Like everyone's thinking 2020 is going to be over with and we're going to go back to normal. That is not at all what's going to happen. And in some ways that's good, because in some ways the corporate machine that was eating the world is a little out of control. So maybe we have an opportunity to build something a little bit different, a little bit better. So we've got a lot of opportunity here to think about how we want to live and how we want to live differently. For example, I've been working from home since 1996. I mean, I'm feral. I can't even go into an office. Like it's just, you know, they made PC anywhere, and I had a 28A modem, and I was all that in 1995, right? So the amount of people and the amount of executives right as the pandemic hit and right as shutdowns hit, who were suddenly forced to confront the fact that, ooh, we are going to have to figure out how to work from home. The ones who thought that was a brand new idea, I just had to laugh. It was like, if your first question was, do we have a telecommuting policy? It was the wrong question. Like you're already behind the ball. This can completely happen. What's interesting is only 3% of the United States workforce was working remotely pre-pandemic. It is projected now that 16% of those positions are going permanently remote. So that is a huge societal shift. I mean, it took us from 1995 to 2020 to get 3% out of the office. It took 8 months to get an additional 17% out of the office. So that is going to have ramifications, because a lot of people at home and went, you know what, I kind of like this. I don't necessarily need to be in a silver box on a black strip of asphalt for an hour and two a day. It's hard to work from home, but once you learn how to do it, it's okay. So, you know, there's some shifts coming, and I think they're good, and I think we can learn from them and sort of make these new decisions. That being said, you know, without sustained action, we could see employment for women drop in the next 18 to 24 months at the steepest rate since the end of World War II. And we all remember in the 1940s, the men went to fight and the women entered the workforce. Actually, the first child centers were started by Eleanor Roosevelt during the time in the 1940s. When the men came back, women were shoved out of the workplace at amazing rates. And that is, without sustained attention, that could potentially happen again over the next couple of years. Women's workforce participation has dropped to 57%, which is the lowest level since 1988 in the United States. So this is in the United States. We talked globally first. This is in the US. Here's some alarming statistics that we need to kind of take in, especially those of us who have children, and we really want them to have a good experience as they're moving through school and entering the workforce and doing the things they need to do. In September of 2020, 80% of the 1.1 million people who exited the workforce in that month were women. 80% of 1.1 million people in September 2020. That was just one of the months. In December of 2020, women accounted for all of the net job losses in the United States. Women lost more jobs than anyone. And it's especially hitting women of color as well. So this is not just a women's issue. This has intersectionality built into it. It has all sorts of issues built into it. Employment for men with high school degrees has recovered to pre-pandemic levels. So men who have high school degrees in 2021, their employment levels have recovered to pre-pandemic levels. For women, that's not the case. That's not the case. Women are 8% less likely to be at work right now, pre-pandemic. Another interesting fact that's going on in the United States is 1 in 4 women are considering exiting the workforce entirely now and downshifting. And I have to think that some of this could be good. There's a lot of entrepreneurship that was started by women, small businesses started by women. Women who were going to the office all of a sudden discovered, hey, maybe I didn't like being in the office. Maybe I want to do something better. Maybe there's talent I can unleash and capacity that I have. And so women's entrepreneurship is going up while this exit is going on. So I think there are some positives built into that, although it's something that we need to pay attention to. 2 million are predicted to leave corporate America in this next year. And pre-COVID, 1 in 5 direct reports to a CEO were women, and only 1 in 30 was a woman of color, which is just atrocious on every level. It's just not okay at all. So I want to stop there for a second because I don't want to make this be a downer. We just need to look at things as they are and then talk about what are some of the skills we need. What are some of the skills that we can all develop collectively as a Rotary Club to sort of look at the situation in the local area and sort of think about some ways to think through. So anybody have any reaction to the statistics so far? Do they mirror what you've seen in Hawaii? Is it something that's been on your radar screen? Were you surprised? Were you not surprised? Let me know. Lonnie.
Oh, Shelly, hi, this is Lonnie.
Hi.
I just wanted to know if you can tell us why. There's a lot of why, you know, on all the things that you just said.
There's a lot of why. And a lot of it is going back to stereotypes and going back to a patriarchal view of what women should be doing. And so when the kids are home and they're not able to go to school, it was the woman who chose to stay home or the woman who was expected to stay home. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of, I think, women questioning, is this all there is to life? I think a lot of people have come to take a breath. It's kind of like Mother sent us back to our rooms so we could think for a while, think about what we've done. And I think a lot of us discovered, maybe there's something different I need to be doing with my life. So I think it's a combination of factors, but I really do think it's a traditional sort of stereotypical model that people snap back to and didn't think through. But that seems to be generally the consensus that we're hearing. That's a good question.
I have a question, Shelley.
Sure.
I'm wondering what role, or how do I phrase this? Have you heard of DINKS, dual income, no kids? It's when 2 adults together, committed and fully employed, and they don't have kids, so they got lots of disposable income. I'm wondering if women who don't have children are included in this job loss percentage, or if it's more exclusively towards mothers?
That's a really good question, and I don't have an answer for that. My sense is it's about half and half, because it's hitting dual income folks with children just as much, because oftentimes women are seen and some men are seen and people of color are seen with this lens that if you're a woman, if you don't have kids yet, certainly you're going to. Childless by choice is not something that's broken through the consciousness of anyone, it seems like. It's about, my sense is about 50-50. I'd like to get a handle on what that actually is. I don't think it's primarily mothers. I do think it is sort of a broad brush that's going through. Yeah. Keith, I think you went off mute there for a second. Did you have something you wanted to?
Well, I just was, and you've already covered it, but my question was more along the lines of what the role of the school shutting down in that, right? Because you say, yeah, I guess traditionally women have been one taking care of the kids, but more than that too, you can't overlook the fact that there are a lot of single mothers out there too. So they don't have a choice because they're the one. That
is a huge point, and thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely. Absolutely. Single mothers were absolutely in a vice. Right. You have a job, you can't afford childcare, your child is home, they're absolutely single mothers carried a large burden, and it affected them to the point where they're going to have trouble recovering. And I think the lag in recovery time is where it hits, because once you have a large unemployment event like this in 2008, in 1992, and 1987, let's just go back. The longer you are out of the workforce, the harder it is for you to get back in. And so upskilling and reskilling and helping women get back into the workforce after they're already dug in over here is going to be hard. So, the one thing that we really need is allies. We need allies who realize that we're all worthy, that we all have things to offer, and that we all have things that we can generate. Keith mentioned I do a lot of work in tech. I do a lot of work with artificial intelligence. And this past year, I can tell you, we saw an acceleration in deployment of artificial intelligence and other non-human interventions in the workplace that were on the way, but were highly accelerated by 2020. So a lot of those trends are also coming into play, which have nothing to do with gender necessarily, but it's something that is likely to disproportionately hit service workers the most. And a lot of women of color and a lot of women do occupy many of the positions in the service industries. So that's another factor that's going to come into play here for employment.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I mean, I definitely, as a male, I feel like I certainly have a role to play. But one of the things I've been most frustrated with this has been like the Department of Education stance of not reopening schools. And if you think about it, you go, well, I don't know why that is, but the majority of teachers are women. So it's not really women helping women either. So it's like, if you open the schools, more women can go to work.
Yeah, it's a complicated situation when you got public health and everything else to take into account. We've all been learning as we've been going. That's for absolute sure. That's for absolute sure. Any other questions or comments about what we just covered? And then any ideas where you want to go next? Because we can go into resilience, or we can go into, sort of leadership and sort of Maslow's hierarchy and those sorts of things. Kat.
So just kind of going off of what Keith Merrick had just said in terms of like, happy to be an ally. One of the things that I look for when I explore allyship is, what does that mean? Like, how do we actually show up and put allyship into action? And so like, if we're talking to, comrades who are like, yeah, we're on board with that cause, what does that look like?
What does that mean?
What does being an ally for women look like these days?
There's a great website that I would encourage everyone to visit that will answer that question for you. And it's the United Nations He for She campaign. So you just type in he for she. You can go to their website. And they are all about advocating for men, advocating for women. It's a partnership. And they have lots of concrete ideas and ways to share and how to have these conversations so they're not seen as offensive or putting someone down or anything like that. But the He for She campaign is a really terrific place to go for that information, for sure. Yep. Any other thoughts?
I just dropped the link for that website right into the chat box. Everybody should.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, lots of great resources there. I think they did a really good job with that, and lots of statistics too. So it's great to have that conversation, because I know there's tons and tons and tons of men out there who want to know how to help. There's just tons of them. Everyone on here on this call, I'm sure, are feeling that way. And this is a way to get some ideas on how to do that.
So what can
Okay, any ideas?
Yes, I was just going to ask, like, what are some of the things that we can do as individuals to help support the women in our lives and around us to get into leadership positions? Because I think a lot of the people, especially in Rotary, are very people of action, leadership focused, and so I think there's a lot of struggles that women specifically face when it comes to advancement in the workplace. What are some of the things that we can do there to support the women that are in our lives?
That is a great question. That is a great question. First, become informed on what's happening around you. Second, listen, actively listen and inquire what the woman needs or wants. She will tell you what she needs and what she wants. Think about training opportunities, where to learn, where to attend workshops, where to get this information. I have a nano course on women's leadership at Ubiquity University. It's like $30, I think, but it's a nice course where we go through some of these options and some of these things. But I think the most important thing for allies to understand is that women's leadership styles are different. Women's leadership styles, not stereotyping, but women communicate differently in the workplace. And they have a multifaceted approach to women's leadership. And what is leadership sometimes from our perspective is not perceived as leadership from another perspective, right? So recognizing that not all women are the same. You can't stereotype anyone. You can't have any bias, but actively look for the leadership style that this other person is bringing, because they may be leaders, but you're not recognizing them as leaders, right? Because you have this preconceived notion as to what a leader should be. And women are really, we're painted in the workplace a lot as sort of successful women, powerful women. What does that look like? On the one hand, people say, ooh, women are powerful, and that's great. On the other hand, women are often called an ice queen because they develop this idea that they can't show emotion in the workplace, where people will label them as weak. So people will, there will be this stereotype. Conniving. Women are often accused of being conniving and accused of sexual impropriety and being a diversity hire. And there's all of these things that can come along with women, in the leadership, and people being really masculine. And we have this really harsh cultural dynamic between what's a feminine quality and what's a masculine quality. And if the pandemic has done nothing else, it's allowed us to have a conversation about what does that actually mean? I know a lot of men who show more feminine qualities. They are more collaborative. They're accused of that. So people don't see them as leaders, but they actually really are. I see women with more masculine qualities being painted with this brush. And I think that's wrong as well. We can all be leaders. And it depends on how we approach things. So there's different kinds of leadership. right? And you have to figure out what kind of leadership you want to have in your organization as a business, right? What kind of leader am I going to be? What kind of leadership traits am I looking for? How can I help people develop those things? Because not all leaders have the right style for the organization that they're in. So it's hard to say definitively what you do. And that's why these things are really complicated. That's why these things are really difficult. It all comes down to conversation and making sure that people have access to training and opportunities to develop those leadership qualities, and making sure that the leadership qualities that that person is expressing are seen as leadership qualities. You know, there's very different kinds of leadership inside an organization. You have this, you know, command and control style of leadership. And I don't know about you, but that was my dad. That man was command and control from the word go. And that is typically seen as this, you know, command up from the top down to everybody else. It's a very, you know, militaristic kind of leadership style. But that's certainly not the only ones out there. There's pace setting leaders. If you're a pace setter, you are driving yourself as hard as you're driving your team. If you're collaborative, if you're creative, all of these things are leadership skills. Command and control leaders don't work well. They work really well in crisis situations and chaos situations and turnaround situations. Collaborative leaders work best in other types of situations. So it's all really highly dependent on the person and what they need.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to kind of throw it out there. I'm going to throw you on the spot, totally, Brenda, but as CEO of a nonprofit, one of the largest nonprofits in our community, and being a woman, and our organization is very women heavy compared to a lot of other organizations out there, and all of our leadership team that reports to you is also women. So, and I think that's amazing. So I want to know from your perspective, what are the qualities that you look for in women when you're looking into that leadership role, and what makes them stand out for you as a CEO of an organization?
Thanks, Keith. Let me see. What was your evaluation? No, just kidding. You know, healthcare is very female driven. And so roles like the CEO of healthcare organizations is typically taken on by a male. So I would say that one of our initiatives has been to ensure that I don't know why somebody's mowing my grass at the moment, but to make sure, hang on a minute. Wow, that was timely. To bring in males into our organization. I'm a strong believer in that everyone brings strength to the organization. And as I sit on the board of the hospital, and we have our own board of directors as a nonprofit, and I sit on many other boards, to me, in that leadership, you need a balance, because I've been on boards that have been more female or more male, and it even in the organization. So I'm always anxious to bring people in that just bring people in. I really don't think about too much whether they're male or female, but I do know that the balance is really powerful. So because we just think differently in some ways, and you know, I don't want to stereotype it too far, but I do think that there needs to be that balance, because you know, a large male prominent board has a tendency to move down a direction that isn't encompassing of issues that are related to women, and vice versa. So that's kind of what I would say. But I'm always looking, so grateful for Keith, and many of our new hires are males, even in the nursing, and that I think is fabulous.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. You know, it was interesting when I was my career put me into two diametrically opposed situations where I was only one of two female executives in the automotive industry with one woman on our board. And I think 5 women in a 1,500 member organization. And then I went to work for CAE, which is the California Association for the Education of Young Children. And 95% of the members were women and the board. And we had a big issue with men in childcare because we were trying to overcome that hurdle. And I just wished so much, Brenda, that both of those situations hadn't been so weighted one way or the other. And just, I know I'm presenting as female now, but I'm actually genderqueer and a member of the LGBTQ community. And I can tell you that both sides of my brain were really highly activated by both situations that I was in. And I could really see the blend that is really, really necessary for all of us to help each other, you know, embrace those diversity, embrace that difference, and not be too anything. Like, let's not be too anything. Let's sort of welcome everybody in. So yeah, I can relate to that 100%. They're both very different organizations and style wise, but very different. It's all about partnership for sure. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I also wanted to kind of throw a question over to Kat, because in her previous role, she was the CEO of an organization here in our community. And I'd love to get your perspective on women in leadership within the Hilo community and what your experience was like there.
Within the Hilo community, well, when I think of leadership and strong female leadership in the Hilo community, I think of my Rotarian sisters. It's just what comes to mind, faces on this call and some that are missing. When I think about what's happening in Hilo overall, at the same time, I can look at our club and think, well, how, you know, what's the ratio of female to male participants? And in this call, we're balanced in this call. And then overall as the club, I remember joining the club and being like, oh, do a little head count. When I go to the county council meetings, it feels balanced. So it is nice to see that, like, even on our local level, there's you know, perspective on all sides. And when I think about my time as CEO, it was 1,000 farm, and that was something I struggled with because the farm crew is typically male, like 9 out of 10 of them. And then the hospitality staff, because we were doing agritourism, staffing a visitor center, that was predominantly female during my time at the company, and the chocolate crew was a good mix. And so I remember specifically trying to diversify that, and it is a challenge at the same time because a lot of the farm task crews needed muscle, you know, and so we were kind of navigating that, but I was able to promote managers into females into management positions.
Excellent. Excellent. Yep. That's great.
And Shelly, can you tell us a little bit about the difference in communication styles between men and women in the workplace, and if there's any similarities that they share or anything that's like really kind of broadly different?
Communication styles?
Yeah.
Yes, there are definitely differences in the way we all communicate, but really it really comes down more to the individual and their sense of confidence and their sense of safety when it comes to communicating. Communication styles improve overall when there is a safe environment, when there's permission, you know, to speak and to interact and to understand that certain people just have different styles. For example, one of the things that happens in a crisis situation like COVID is our communication styles actually radically changed when we're under stress. Sometimes our communication styles. So if your communication style is loquacious and always wordy, and you have big emails and you're under stress and suddenly you've got 3 or 4 word answers, people around you start feeling unsafe, because that is a quantitative difference from how you communicated before. If you're working with someone who just, I am the 4 or 5 word person normally. Like if I get an 18-page email, I send back like a sentence. If I send back like a bunch, people get nervous because they're not used to that. So you have to be sensitive to what kind of communication style you have. How do you want to communicate? You know, and I'm tired of hearing people drag Gen X and Gen Z and Gen Y, and I'm tired of everybody dragging everybody, because everybody's got a preferred communication style. You ask questions and detect. Do you want me to call you when this happens? Do you want me to email you when this happens? Do you want me to text you? Do you want me to hit you up on WhatsApp? I have all of my younger staff, and I have a staff of about 25 now. They're all on WhatsApp, and I have different ringtones for each one of them because I'm in contact with them like 24/7. It feels like they have no idea what time of day it is. They don't care. We are a global staff anyway, so somebody's awake in Sri Lanka or the Netherlands or the States at any given moment. But you have to check in with people. Do you just want me to text you? And then honor that. Like it's just one of those things. Get to know the people you work with. We oftentimes assume that if we're leaders, they have to adapt to our style. And that's just not true. We need to adapt to each other's styles. And then when we're under stress, we have to pay attention to how our language is changing and how our tone is changing and how our frequency of communication is changing. Because if it changes too much, people around us are going to wonder what's going on. And we have to reassure them that I'm just under stress. Don't worry about it. We'll get back to this. But I think that's the most of what I see isn't styles between men and women. Like there's this trope out there that, you know, men don't talk a lot and women talk more. Oh, that is not actually true. It's how we hear each other. that is the thing, the determining thing. So, you know, I would just encourage everybody to ask your people what they need from you and then provide that. It's just not that hard. But as leaders, we're not supposed to have to ask the question. It's like, oh, what kind of an effective leader can you be? You just didn't know that. No, it's not true. Ask questions.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw it out to the other guys on this call. I'd love to get your feedback or to find out about a woman that you know in your life, whether personal or professional, who has just been an incredible leader in any area, and to find out who they are and what it is that really stood out for you about them. So I'll throw it to Peter first.
Unmute, Peter, unmute.
Yes, sorry. Did I hear my name?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. So the question was just asking for the guys on the room to share a story about a woman in their life, whether it's personal or professional, who has just been an incredible leader, and to say who it is and why they stood out for you.
That's an easy one for me, obviously. I think everybody knows my wife, Claudia. She's a powerhouse. She's a force of nature. How she does everything she does doesn't, I don't know. But she's, I don't leadership, not sure exactly. She's very involved with people on a personal level. I know she, you know, looks at individuals and takes a lot of time. I mean, some of the meetings she has goes on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
She's very good. I mean, you know, she gets a lot done. She's done a lot in her life, and she's not stopping anytime soon.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I love that. That's very cool.
Peter, how about
I hear her in the background right now. She's got thing going on class, I guess, probably teaching a class, I think.
Fantastic.
That's awesome. Thank you, Peter. How about you, Keith? Is there a woman from your life that has stood out as being an incredible leader, whether personally or professionally? And what was that really made them stand out to you?
Well, there's lots of them, but I would say the one that would be easiest to relate to would be my daughter as a leader in Civil Air Patrol, where she ran a encampment for over 200 kids and senior members. And what her great leadership style is, she's great at delegating and empowering people around her to be able to get the job done and trusting them to do it. She was also great at supporting people in terms of, if they were concerned, making sure she picked them up and sent them on their way, and with a nice task for them to be able to accomplish that they could do and feel confident doing. And she also handled herself very well in stressful situation when senior members were questioning her abilities and the choices she was making. So, very, very strong leader. So impressive. Of course, she drives me nuts because of her leadership, because she's supposed to listen to me, but hey,
Good for her. That's great.
I love that. Doug, same question to you. There's a woman who stands out for you in your life, either personally or professionally, for being an exceptional leader. Who was it, and what's their story?
I know why you picked me last out of the males on here, because I could go on and on and on. So I apologize for coming on late, Shelley. I didn't necessarily get a chance to hear everything that you were talking about, but my wife, Deb Lewis, is a retired colonel in the Army. She commanded in combat. She commanded 3 different engineer districts in Philly, Seattle, and Iraq.
Amazing.
She's going to be the state commander for the Veterans of Foreign Wars here this coming June for a year. She runs her own business called Mentally Tough Women. So, and that's without thinking too hard about all of it. So, frankly, it's only been in the last 5 months where I've even got a name for myself at all. It's primarily, oh, you're Deb Lewis's husband.
That is phenomenal. That is phenomenal. That is amazing. Well, we're sort of getting to the end of the time, so I was just gonna mention one other thing for everybody. This isn't for women or for men, this is for everybody. I very much encourage you to understand that 2020 was the first year of a long series of years that are going to be very disruptive for us as a human species. As climate change continues to make inroads, as economic conditions continue to change, as more pandemics are on the horizon, I really want to encourage everybody to sort of dig deep and make sure that you are living your best life every minute that you can live it. A lot of times during the quarantine, it got down to, hey, I got a porch and I got a cat. And that's sort of the joke around the house. It's like when we get stressed about something, it's like porch and cats. We have porch and cats. Yes, we have porch and cats. And it's that daily practice of gratitude and that daily alignment with your values. That's that daily intention to be kind to the other, to embrace the other, to not judge the other, but to work collaboratively and collectively to better our lives and the lives of the people around us, to recognize our own biases, to recognize our own stuff, to work on our own stuff and get that out, and take this opportunity to be better humans now, so that when times get harder, we can just be better and better and better and better. And it's within each of our capacity to do that, as long as we stay in line with our interior values and we're living those on the outside, and we're making sure that our organizations are living their values too. And I wish all of you the best. And thank you for having me just on the spur of the moment, just to talk about a few things that were on my mind. And I hope you got something out of it. If nothing else, you know, it was a crazy woman with hair and a cat and, you know, all sorts of weird stuff. It was different. So, so anyway, I just wish the very best for all of you. And thanks for having me here. So.
Thank you so much, Shelley. Thank you for coming on at last minute's notice and hosting incredible facilitation to talk about women's leadership and women in the workplace, and having such depth of knowledge and resources to be able to direct us to. So thank you for that. So as we wrap up our presentation today, I'd like us to go through the 4-way test of the things that we think, say, and do as Rotarians. First, is it the truth?
Truth.
Second, is it fair to all?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Third, will it build
goodwill and better friendships?
Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fifth, have fun. Yay, thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Shelley.